At it and thought about it, I thought we can begin where we left off pretty seamlessly, I hope. Let's pray together. Father, we're grateful for this day and this class. We're grateful for the gift that is this church. We're grateful for the people that we love here and ask that you would be with Peggy as she recuperates and recovers. We're grateful for a few minutes to study and worship together today. We ask that you would bless our study and bless our time together. Please hear our prayer in Christ's name. Amen. So I thought that as I looked at the end of where we left off in Exodus, I thought that will be a good place to begin. I believe that, and I did not pick up a bulletin as I walked in, but I believe, as what we've typically done, I believe that we will not have class on the 21st or the 28th, which is usually, it's always the Sunday before Christmas and the Sunday between Christmas and New Year's. So the 21st seems a little early to me. But I believe that we'll not have class on the 21st or the 28th. So that means 3 weeks for an Advent series. Today, next week, and the 14th. Let's look at Exodus 32 and thereabouts, 32, 33, 34. And I'd like to go back to 2 Kings. We were there last week. And then I'd like to go look at Habakkuk, of all places, and a passage in Isaiah. So the last third or so of Exodus are all of these instructions for building the tabernacle and the, for lack of a better word, all of the accoutrements that come with it. Very detailed instructions to do it this way, do it that way, do it as I have instructed, do it as I have told you. I will bless the craftsman to do the work. So we're all set. We're ready to go. We're going to bring the people of God out of Egypt, and we're going to have them worship Yahweh, worship the Lord, and we're going to get the people in the land at the same time, in the same place. Okay? And I talked a bit about that last week. Against the backdrop of all of the nations, we'll choose one man to bless, through whom we'll bless all nations, and this family is going to be, we're going to grow them into a nation, and we're going to put them in the land, the children of Abram in the land promised to Abram. The children of Abraham in the land that Abraham comes to. And as we turn around good, once we got all the instructions, we turn around good, and Israel, in the mystery of Moses' absence, he goes up on the mountain and he's not here. Well, what's happened to him? What's happening? Where are we? We're unsure kind of what our status is. All of this instruction that comes to the Israelites, make the tent this way, make the altar that way, make the table this way. Israel comes and they where earlier they'd given gold and materials for the construction of this tabernacle. Here they're going to donate and give gold, and Aaron makes these gods for them. He makes a calf. These are your gods who have brought you out of Egypt. This is Exodus 32:4. So it's very striking, the contrast between Israel's instruction to make, and they're making all of the the place where we will worship, and the things that will assist us. In the midst of the nations, we are one nation for the blessings of all. And when you turn around good, and they are making a rival deity in a sense. They have struck at the very root of the identity of who redeems them. Why a calf? That's a good question. I'm working off my memory. My memory is you see images of animals, calves. You see them in Egypt. You know, the Egyptians like cats or other animals. Lots of animals. You see bulls in Sumer and Assyria and Babylon in some of their, I don't know, technical term, goings on, their doings. So you've got a lot of agricultural, for the lack of, again, agricultural motifs, agricultural elements. Working from memory, in a sense, there is a connection here perhaps to fertility and therefore well-being, because in many ways our well-being is so tied to the well-being of the land that if the land and all of the, kind of everything that goes with planting, sowing, reaping, eating, feeding the cows, slaughtering the cows, eating the cows. If it doesn't go well with the land, it doesn't go well at all. And I have seen some studies that wanted to see what would they have known from Egypt about bulls or calves or cows or animals that would have connected in their mind as some way they could grasp for certainty or assurance or insurance. It's kind of hedging your bets. For example, you make a sacrifice to the deity of fertility so that your crops are fertile and your animals are fertile, but you'll also make a sacrifice to the god of the storm and the rains, because if it doesn't rain, there's no fertility. So there's kind of some bet hedging or insurance. So what is it about the calf in Egypt that would be very tempting? And going from memory, I don't remember the exact details, but I remember there was something there. Is that a tolerable answer for why there's a calf of all things? Why the calf is, well, I think it's a temptation for, well, hi, sweetie. Good morning. Yes, I see you. Little kitty cat has joined us. There she goes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a certain kind of sense. Mm-hmm. Right. A golden one. It's back here. This may be the same cat that shows up in the library. It's a real sweet one. And if you don't, a lot of them are real skittish and they won't come close to you. But sometimes, I think it's this one, if you hold the door open too long, this cat says, I know it's cool or warm or what, or there's humans in here who will love me. And so this cat will show up in the library. So, isn't it pretty? Yeah. A church cat.
We have one at our facility like that. In fact, just found out how to get when someone comes in the door, it opens automatically, it can come in.
It'll come in.
And look for the person that likes to feed it. Actually got to her room one day,
Yeah.
the apartment, and we thought, she's trained it very well.
The monks, as they were writing their scrolls, this was medieval period. In one of the scrolls, there's a footprint, a cat's footprint in ink on one of the pages, where the cat in the monastery had walked across the page in a perfect little footprint. So we have exchanged the Creator for some way to grasp for certainty or reassurance, and we have worshiped the creation or a creation instead of the Creator. So you find that critique often when the prophets will critique idolatry, is your worship does not go far enough. You've worshiped the creature, something you have fashioned, instead of the one who fashions you. So the instruction to make is inverted, and so now they have made something and then set it up. Okay. The question is, we don't know whether or not we'll have a future. Well, we'll try, any way possible to make it happen, okay? So this calf will give us the security or the assurance that we deeply crave. Okay, if you look over in Exodus 34, once we kind of work through this new twist in the narrative, and we kind of work through this, we're going to kind of renew covenant. Moses kind of re-gives the tablets again, it's a re-giving of the law, a renewal of the law. And I mentioned this last time, but to emphasize it in passing, in Exodus, it's 34:12, do not make a treaty with the inhabitants of the land that you're coming into. I made a point about that last week briefly as we were closing. I think it strikes at the same basic issue, which is we're uneasy in the land. And in our unease, we'll make alliances with the nations around us because we hope that will keep us safe. Okay, Moses' instruction to Israel, God through Moses to Israel, do not make a treaty. And I think this helps us understand the do not intermarry instructions. Do not take their sons for your daughters or their daughters for your sons because, and the critique is almost always embedded within that, because they will turn your hearts away from me to worship their gods. Which that instruction kind of pushes in one direction, and it would appear that it pushes against the instruction of bring in the strangers among you and bring them in. So you got kind of a welcoming law, and then you have an exclusionary law. Stay away from the foreigners, the strangers, the other nations. Do not make alliances, they will turn your heart. But when you have others around you or others within you or among you, bring them in. I think the way to explain that that I have found most helpful is to understand how those treaties functioned and how those alliances functioned. It's a political game to make yourself, to better your odds in a very competitive and very volatile political situation in that land bridge between Asia and Africa, which is where Palestine is. You've got world powers in Egypt, if you're looking at the map, Egypt and Babylon, down in the southwest and up in the northeast, and in the middle is Palestine. And whoever controls the land bridge is that much closer to their enemy, or to their trade rival, or to the other guys. And everyone would love to make inroads there. And I have used this illustration in the past, but I guess the more time passes, the more folks don't remember it or catch it. You remember in the Cold War, when Russia has an alliance in Cuba, which is real close to Florida. Okay, I think the proximity to Florida is the real attraction to Cuba. And I think our interest in Alaska is because its proximity to Russia on the other side. So you see some geopolitical moves in the Cold War to get us close to our enemies, or close to the threats, or close to the other guy. Okay? So as you come into the land of Palestine, do not make a treaty. Well, the treaties really will kind of undercut the promise. But what Israel should rest in is God's promise to keep them safe in the land and not rely on the treaties. Okay? Well, if we were to go to 2 Kings 21, we see at the end of the story, Manasseh makes a treaty with Babylon. The final kings of Judah. As you read through the end of 2 Kings, the author, compiler of 2 Kings kind of gives a summary report of all of these kings. Some are longer, some are shorter, but it almost follows, it's almost like a template. Here's the good king, here's the bad king. And we repeat the same or similar phrase or refrain at almost every juncture. This king, and the name changes, did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And there's a statement about, and he reigned X number of years. And so we find a summation of that king, and there's really no ambiguity. Either the king's a good king or a bad king.
We usually have
Yep.
one good king and then five bad
And then
ones,
5 bad
one
ones.
good one, and then 12 bad ones.
Right.
It's just,
Someone tries to pull out, you got a Josiah, right, that tries to pull it back onto the road, and then as soon as he dies, someone else drives it right back into the ditch.
I hope
Yes.
in the description of all of these kings, it says, okay, I can't quote it, but it says, it runs something like this. Are these things not mentioned in the books of the kings?
In the books of the
In
kings.
the books of the kings. Do we know what that book was? Or what they were? I don't remember whether it's...
The short version could be some type of court chronicle.
Is it still available?
No copy has ever been discovered. Some type of court record, I guess, would be the something that we could, kind of, what's the nature, what genre are we talking about? The court records, the official records. Well, these kings of Judah systematically kind of dismantle the kingdom. There are kind of spiritual components. For example, 2 Kings 21, the first few verses, you see what Manasseh does. He builds altars in the temple. By this point, the temple has been built. We're long past David, long past Solomon. The temple has been built, and in the temple is an altar, an Asherah pole. I don't know what that looked like. Maybe like a totem pole or something like that. He practices witchcraft, divination. We talked about that. So there's a spiritual component. There are political components. We go over to 2 Kings 24. Jehoiakim, 24 verse 1. During Jehoiakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon attacked. Again, they're a superpower to the north, and they come down into Judah. Jehoiakim became his vassal for 3 years. That's our Pew Bible, his vassal for 3 years. And then he turned and rebelled against him. So a vassal, that's kind of, if you've heard the term, we probably have heard it in the context of medieval Europe. A client king, a king whose kingly reign was at the pleasure of someone more powerful. It's kind of like, what kind of king are you when you're dependent upon someone more powerful than you? Well, the answer is not much of one. So the king of Judah is kind of a mighty king, quote unquote, mighty king. He's a dependent on the Babylonians. And that term vassal, that's a political term. How does one become a vassal? One makes a deal. You signs an agreement, you signs a treaty, and at the risk of oversimplification, you cut a deal to make it as sweet as you possibly can for yourself, knowing the handwriting is on the wall, and you cannot win, and you will not try. So it's sort of like a surrender, but the great superpower will sweeten the deal by saying, if you surrender to me, your life can be good. Let me make you a deal you can't refuse. Life could be good. We could do it the easy way, we could do it the hard way. The easy way is you surrender to me, and you can be king, you have your palace, things can go well. Now, you serve my interests. This is a deal with strings attached. The strings are, you serve my interests, you're dependent upon us for protection, military protection. We have advanced our interest into your area. We will advance our troops into your area to help you. Again, to help you.
Sounds like you're describing the United States and Ukraine.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, these are similar deals that great, powerful nations make, and there's arm twisting, and there's various ways to sweeten the pot. In other words, diplomacy. Sometimes it's diplomacy with a gun barrel, a pistol barrel in your back, right? Okay, so when one becomes a vassal, one doesn't become a vassal necessarily willingly. Or if you are willing, it's the best deal you can cut, knowing the alternative is really bad. Okay? It seems to be, it's the very kind of thing that Moses says, that's what you should not do. Well, and then, what's the one thing a vassal shouldn't do is exactly what Jehoiakim does, which is, if you had any sense, okay, here's our West Texas in us. Boy, if you had any sense, you don't rebel against the great power, the great hand that feeds you. He bit the hand that fed him. You don't rebel. It's futile to rebel. He rebels. Is there any future? Well, Jehoiakim, it would seem, kind of seals the fate for Judah. And by the time you turn the page, literally, the kingdom of Judah is over. The end of 2 Kings. And then the Babylonian exile. Well, if you want to turn to Habakkuk, in our Pew Bible, it's page 832. You remember you have to sing your song of all your prophets to get there. I don't know if you've read Habakkuk lately. It's a great little book. The setting is sometime in and around that period of 2 Kings, when you've got a prophet who wonders, do we even have a future here or not? These are the people who are reading Exodus after the exile, during the exile. And the way we see it laid out in Exodus is we wondered, is there a future? And what I said last week is Exodus shows us if we have a future, it is because God is gracious and He has brought us out once, He can bring us out again. Hold that thought when you come to Habakkuk and the prophet looks around and he kind of sees the way things are in that period of 2 Kings. And he says, and our Pew Bible is pretty helpful because the way they break up the paragraphs and the way they put these paragraph headings in, it's fairly helpful. Our Pew Bible, Habakkuk's first prayer, which is chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. So the prophet Habakkuk, here it's his first lament, or his first prayer to Yahweh. How long, O Lord, must I call out for help and you do not listen? Or cry out about violence and you do not save? Why do you force me to look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Oppression and violence are right in front of me. Strife is ongoing and conflict escalates. This is why the law is ineffective and justice never emerges. For the wicked restrict the righteous, therefore justice comes out perverted. Okay. Kind of the close of the first prayer. Okay. It's that word law that I think tips us off that what Habakkuk sees is he sees this among the community of faith in Israel and Judah. The law. I see the law is perverted. The law is disregarded. There's injustice because there's disregard of the law. So that's an in-house, internal kind of way to talk. I look around at the way things are inside, and I am greatly dismayed. How long will we have to look at this? Will you not do anything? Okay, in a word, it's the kind of the conditions that you'd see in 2 Kings. Okay, God's answer is coming. He then looks around. Okay, we don't have quotation marks. So our Pew Bible here kind of helps us understand this is God's response. Look at the nations and observe. Be utterly astounded. Okay? How long, O Lord, will you let this kind of lawlessness, law in the sense of the Torah, the instruction, the law of Moses, this lawlessness continue? And God says, look around at the nations. Now that concept, this should be familiar to us because we've talked about that quite a bit. Of all of the nations, God calls Israel to be a nation for the sake of the nations. Of all the nations, we call Abram to make him into a nation for the sake of the people. Okay, look at the nations. I'm doing something in your days you wouldn't believe if I were to tell you. You won't believe it when you hear it. Okay, they may not have expected this, but verse 6, I am raising up the Chaldeans, our footnote here, Babylonians, that bitter, impetuous nation that marches across the earth's open spaces to seize territories not its own. They are fierce and terrifying. Their views of justice and sovereignty stem from themselves. They are the epitome of what we see in Genesis 2 and 3 with Adam and Eve in the garden. They determine for themselves what is right. Their view of justice comes from within themselves. They do not submit to anything other than their own desires. You go down to the end of in chapter 1, verse 9, 10, and 11. I am doing something about it, the answer is. How long before you do something about it? And the answer is, not long. I'm already working on it. I'm working on it right now. It's the Babylonians, it's the Chaldeans. I'm working on it. Habakkuk comes back and says, that's not what I expected. That's not what I expected. Have you noticed the Babylonians or the Chaldeans? So see chapter 1, verse 12. Again, our Pew Bible is helpful by marking it out and helping us understand. This is Habakkuk again. Are you not from eternity, Lord my God, my Holy One? You will not die. You appointed them to execute judgment. My rock, you destined them to punish us. Your eyes are too pure to look on evil, and you cannot tolerate wrongdoing. So why do you tolerate those who are treacherous? What Habakkuk struggles to understand is, okay, I get it that there is injustice and wrongdoing within Israel and Judah. And I get it that the Babylonians invent justice on their own terms. But I don't get how you can use them, and I don't understand how there is a future here. Okay? Why are you silent while one who is wicked swallows up one who is more righteous than himself? Verse 13. The answer to use Babylon to answer his complaint about Judah is one that Habakkuk was not prepared for. How can this be? Okay. Habakkuk 2:1. He's made his complaint or his prayer, he's made his lament, and he says, I will stand at my guard post, I will station myself on the tower, and I will wait and see. He has made his complaint or his lament known, and I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'll just take my place and I'll wait and see. And it's that kind of uncomfortable silence here that kind of characterizes a few hundred years of Israel and Judah's life. Is that uncomfortable silence of waiting, trying to make sense in their moment, kind of constrained as they are by their circumstances. How I don't understand how God will work a way out of this. But as I look around, I don't see a way out of this. In fact, everywhere I look, it's worse than the place I looked before. I don't see a way out. And I voice my lament to Yahweh, and I pray for a way out. And what answer I get, I still don't see a way out. You mean you're going to work through the Babylonians? But they're worse than we are. I will watch and wait. That's 2:1 and 2. Verse 2, the Lord's second answer, God's second answer. Write it down and make it plain. The vision is yet for the appointed time. It testifies about the end. Israel's discomfort is they're in the middle. And in the middle, we don't see the end. Okay? God says to Habakkuk, I'm telling you about the end. Make it clear and plain. Though it delays, wait for it, since it will certainly come and not be late. His ego is inflated, he is without integrity, but the righteous will live by faith. That phrase gets picked up in Romans. The righteous will live by faith. In other words, I'm well aware of what's going on in Babylon. And what I see is something you can't see. And when I see, God to Habakkuk, when I see the end is sure and clear. And so I'm going to tell you about the end, and you write about it, and you make it so clear, I'm telling you it's going to happen. Here you wait for it. You can't see it, I can see it. And I'm telling you, wait for it. And again, that kind of uncomfortable silence. What happens in Habakkuk 2? Basically, the rest of chapter 2. Our Pew Bible, again, I think very helpfully, those woe oracles. Okay. Woe, verse 9. Woe, verse 12, verse 15. Just systematically sustained statements of judgment against Babylon. In other words, God has their number. Let me count the ways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He goes down and he issues these woes against Babylon. Verse 20. So let Babylon do what Babylon will do. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let the whole earth be silent in his presence. Verse 2. Lord, I have heard the report. I stand in awe of your deeds. Revive your work in these years. Make it known in these years. In your wrath, remember mercy. And he goes on through the rest of chapter 3, praising God for what he will do and for who he is. And at the end of Habakkuk 3 is one of the most beautiful passages in the Old Testament. In essence, here in the middle, in that awful middle, waiting in the middle, Habakkuk doesn't get plucked out of the middle. He gets a vision of the end, but he's still just kind of stuck in the middle. It says, wonderful, though the fig tree doesn't blossom, and there's no fruit, and there's nothing in the fields, all of the appearances of security. Or if we were kind of go back, Joyce's question earlier, why a golden calf? Well, the fertility and all of the appearances of safety and security, if all of that is stripped away, yet I will trust him. I will trust his word that when he says that the end will be sure, that it will be. And yet I will wait. And Habakkuk kind of closes with this kind of confident yearning for God to make it right in the end. If we were to look at Isaiah chapter 2, we'd see a similar prophecy. Time's going to run out on us. But Isaiah 2 is one of the prophetic readings for this day of Advent. And it's talking about the time is coming when I will make it all right. In the middle, I know we're waiting. But I want you to know I can see the end clearly. Don't be confused about how it will work out. I'll work it out. So Israel's waiting. 2 Kings, the faithful, and there were faithful, there was always a faithful remnant. They look around and their king has made an alliance with Babylon. And you think, it's the kind of people that you want to have to be your neighbor are looking around and they're saying, he's doing what? He's made an alliance with who? What does that mean for us? Okay. I don't know what it means for us short term, but long term, hear that the end is sure. Listen, the end is sure. Those faithful remnant reading and hearing Exodus. He's brought us out once. He can bring us out again. So far as it is up to me, we will honor the law, and we will wait and we will see. That uncomfortable waiting. Okay, that here we are in Advent. We're in the uncomfortable waiting. We are confident that God will act on our behalf for our good, for the good of all creation. We know He'll do it. We're waiting. Okay, I'll pick up more next week.